The most disturbing case of a trusted neighbor. The basement was too quiet. An officer held a small flashlight and took one careful step down the wooden stairs. The air felt heavy, as if it had been holding a secret for years. Behind him, Kelly's father whispered her name, his voice barely holding together. The beam of light wavered across the walls until it caught a shape that shouldn't have been there. A corner pile with shadows suddenly looked wrong. The officer's breath froze. He called out for backup, but the words came out small. Then came the creak of a floorboard above. Someone moving, or maybe just a house breathing. Every sound felt alive. The light steadied on the far wall, and in that single, shivering moment, the truth came into view. Kelly had been there the whole time. Valley Stream, New York, 1989. A quiet block with trimmed lawns and porch swings, the kind of neighborhood where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Kids rode bikes between driveways, mailboxes gleamed in the sun, and the smell of backyard barbecue drifted through the air. People knew each other by name, waved when they backed out of their driveways, and left front doors unlocked until sunset. It was an ordinary place built on trust. Until one day, that trust was tested in the cruelest way. The morning after the discovery, the street looked the same, but it wasn't. Curtains stayed drawn, blinds closed. The air felt thinner, like it couldn't hold the weight of what had been found beneath it. Kelly Tynes was 13, bright, kind, a kid everyone liked. She helped her mom with groceries, did homework at the kitchen table, and told her friends she wanted to be a teacher someday. On that ordinary afternoon, she left home to visit a friend down the street, a short walk she'd made countless times. But when dinner came, she didn't return. Her mother called around, first one friend, then another, her voice tight with worry. Hours passed. Lights flickered on up and down the street. Fear, quiet at first, began to grow. Neighbors stepped onto porches. Someone called the police. And just like that, a normal day bent sharply toward a nightmare no one could imagine. Officers went door to door, asking simple questions that no one wanted to answer. Did you see Kelly today? Did she stop by? Some nodded. Some shook their heads, and others stared at the ground, trying to remember every small detail. The search spread quickly. Yards, sheds, wooded paths behind the fences. Flashlights cut through the darkness as more people joined in. There was a strange kind of hope in the movement, the belief that if enough lights searched the dark, the world would give her back. Parents called their kids inside. Dogs barked at nothing, and behind one closed curtain, a quiet house stayed perfectly still. When police reached the neighbor's house, the man who lived just next door, nothing seemed unusual. His porch light burned faintly yellow. The air smelled faintly of detergent and dust. He opened the door with a calm face, eyes tired but steady. He said he hadn't seen Kelly. He said he was sorry. The officers thanked him and left, unaware that behind that same calm expression, something darker waited. The door closed with a quiet click, and for a moment, the street was silent again. No one realized the truth was only a few feet away, hiding in plain sight, in the house of a man everyone trusted. The next morning, officers returned. There were small inconsistencies, details that didn't fit, moments that made them uneasy. They asked to look inside. The man hesitated, then stepped aside. The air inside the house was still. The rooms looked ordinary, a couch, a TV, a dining table. But there was a coldness that didn't belong. Down a narrow hallway sat a half-closed door. The creak of the hinges echoed too long. A beam of light cut down wooden steps into darkness. "Kelly?" an officer called softly. No answer. A few steps later, the flashlight caught something. Familiar fabric, the edge of a blanket, a stillness that spoke louder than sound. And in that stillness, the case broke open forever. The street woke to sirens and flashing lights. Neighbors peered from windows as officers led the man in handcuffs toward a waiting car. The same man who had once waved while mowing his lawn now stared at the ground, face pale under the red-blue glow. Reporters rushed in. Cameras clicked. No one could find the right words. Parents held their children closer. Someone whispered, "He lived right there." In that moment, the illusion of safety cracked. Evil had worn the face of a neighbor, and that realization would haunt Valley Stream for decades. That night, candles flickered along the sidewalk outside Kelly's house. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, holding flowers and photos. The wind carried the soft sound of prayers and quiet crying. Her friends clutched each other, whispering stories that made them laugh through tears. The mayor spoke about unity, but even his voice trembled. When the last candle burned low, no one wanted to leave. The neighborhood that had once felt safe was now bound together by grief, and a question no one could answer. How could someone they trusted do something so terrible? Decades passed, but time didn't wash the memory away. The old house still stood on the same corner, its paint peeling, its windows dark. Children who had once crossed the street to avoid it were grown now, telling their own kids to stay away. Every so often, a journalist came back, camera in hand, asking about the case. Most doors stayed closed. People had learned that peace depended on silence. Yet, under the quiet surface, fear lingered, because once trust breaks on a street like that, it never fully returns. Over 1,000 miles away and 34 years later, another story began in another quiet neighborhood. Ocala, Florida. Bright lawns, white fences, and families who wave from porches. Jake, Jay. Owens lived there with her 4 children. Across the way was Susan Lawrence, a woman who seemed ordinary enough. Quiet, reserved, polite when spoken to. At first, they were just neighbors. But small disagreements, kids playing too close, noise in the evening, started to twist into something tense. Each argument left a scar that never quite healed. 2 people, 2 houses, and a line of grass between them. That's all it took for trust to turn into fear. It was a humid June night in 2023. AJ's children were playing outside when one of their toys rolled near Susan's porch. What followed was shouting, words sharp enough to cut through the still air. The children ran home in tears. AJ, fierce and protective, marched across the yard to demand respect. She knocked on Susan's door, calling out, "We need to talk." Behind the door, Susan shouted back, her voice rising with each word. Neighbors peeked through blinds, sensing trouble. The porch light buzzed overhead. Somewhere in that tense air, years of frustration turned into something much darker. A single sound split the night, a gunshot, sudden and final. The door never opened. AJ fell where she stood, her children screaming from across the yard. For a moment, the entire street froze in disbelief. Porch lights flicked on. Phones dialed 911. Sirens screamed through the stillness. Another neighborhood, another trusted neighbor, and another family broken forever. The echo of that shot would ripple far beyond Ocala, sparking outrage, sorrow, and an old, familiar question. How could something like this happen here? By morning, the story was everywhere. News vans filled the street. Reporters spoke in somber tones about self-defense, race, and fear. Neighbors stood behind yellow tape, crying, hugging, holding signs that read justice for AJ. Her children sat with relatives, too young to understand why the world had changed overnight. Across America, people saw the face of the trusted neighbor who had taken a life through a closed door. The debate grew loud, but beneath it all was one quiet truth. A mother was gone, and 4 children had lost their safety forever. A week later, hundreds gathered outside AJ's home with candles glowing like stars. They held photos, sang softly, and prayed for peace. The air was thick with emotion, the sound of sobbing blending with hymns. In Valley Stream, Kelly's parents watched the vigil on TV. 2 tragedies, decades apart, joined by the same haunting thread, trust misplaced. The candles in Florida looked just like the ones that once burned in New York. Small lights pushing back against endless dark. 2 families, 2 towns, and one lesson echoing across time. Evil doesn't always live far away. Now, both streets stand silent again, one in New York, one in Florida. Porch lights glow softly. Wind rustles the trees. Life goes on, but the memory never fades. Because the face of evil isn't always a stranger in a dark alley. Sometimes it's the person who waves good morning, borrows your tools, and says they'll keep an eye on your house. Trust is a fragile bridge between homes, and once it breaks, the whole town feels it. Every knock, every creak. Every shadow on a quiet street becomes a reminder that even in the safest neighborhoods, danger can wear a friendly smile and stand right next door.